Hi, I'm Laura Lee Scott, and I would like to invite you to try your hand at art. Now, I know I've heard many times through the years, well, I don't have a creative bone in my body, or I can't draw a straight line with a ruler. Well, I think if you'll look around my table here, you'll see I don't even have a ruler. I probably have a little one tucked away somewhere. Every now and then I need a ruler, and every now and then I need to draw a straight line. But I've been drawing since I was a little girl, and I very seldom anymore use a ruler or a straight line when I draw. And so please don't feel inhibited about jumping right in and trying to learn something new, especially as we're aging. Well, I mean, it's important even as you're growing up to be learning new things all the time, but you sort of do that naturally. But as we age, we sort of tend to get stuck in a certain pattern of doing and being. And it helps us quite a bit if we can launch into something new every now and then that challenges us and helps us keep mentally sharp and physically capable as well. So one of the best things you can do to keep yourself mentally sharp is to pursue the practice of drawing. In times past, classical education involved drawing, and you would not have been considered well educated if you had never learned to draw. Drawing is something that everybody can learn. And as for not being creative, well, if you're a human being, you're creative. So don't worry about that. If you've started a business, if you've pursued a career, if you've built a family and a home, all of those are creative pursuits. And when you're raising a child, you're definitely involved in something creative, as is your child. So it's very rare to find a person who truly is not at all creative. And being able to apply that creativity to a skill like drawing and then carry it on, perhaps to the level of creating art, is quite an enjoyable and satisfying pursuit. So, and a goal to reach. So I hope you'll enjoy this. Now, I want to start out today by giving you kind of an introduction to materials and to types of drawing and things you might do. And I want you to realize that drawing helps develop new pathways in your brain. We have neurochemical things that are going on. We have nerve pathways. And I think of it sort of like this. I don't know, maybe somebody scientific would challenge my idea, but I kind of think of it like a path you're trotting. And when you walk through a grassy field the first time, the grass springs right back up, and there's not much of a path there for someone to follow or for you to follow again. But if you walk that path every single day, the practice trods down the grass and the weeds, and you later see a path there. And the more it's trodden, the more the path stays. And I kind of think that's the way nerve pathways are in the brain. The more frequently we travel those, the more they become established for us. So practice is important, just as in anything. And if you had never been taught to read or write, you would have to start, no matter how old you were, you would have to start at a very elementary level and do all the basics, and then you would have to practice. And it's going to be the same way with drawing. And it can get tedious, but there are ways to make it lively for yourself, to make it interesting. And so I really hope you'll be willing to take the challenge. Now, I think, first of all, I'd like to say that I make use of this little booklet. And it's old. The man who developed the booklet to begin with was Bruce McIntyre. And Bruce McIntyre worked for Disney and decided that he could put together a drawing textbook that would help people of all ages, and especially children, and then for use in public schools, learn to draw. And he especially believed that drawing was an essential skill of communication and that everyone needed to know how to draw. And he makes a good argument for the fact that it's possible to do so. So I follow along with his lessons quite a bit in helping my students begin. And if you're interested in having this book, there is an online resource. I don't know if we'll possibly be able to put a link in on our website for that. But at any rate, there is a book called Drawing Textbook by Bruce McIntyre, and you can get it from Audiovisual Drawing Program online. It's very inexpensive, and that's one of the things I always liked about it. I don't like for my students to have to spend a lot of money initially to get supplies and things that they need. And I always say, although I'm careful who I say it to, but I could teach drawing with nothing but a piece of charcoal and a paper bag. And I think I could do that. I wouldn't want to. It wouldn't be as interesting as it is to have all this wonderful bit of supplies before us. But another book I refer to is How to Think Like Leonardo da Vinci by Michael Gelb. And that's easily found in bookstores and online. It has a wonderful drawing program in the back, and I will refer to that sometimes as well. So those are just a couple of resources for you that may help make the whole process a little bit more enjoyable and interesting. And besides that, How to Think Like Leonardo da Vinci, that's talking about how to think. And so we're talking about philosophies. We're talking about things that were understood through many, many generations, many centuries, understandings that people have had about art production and about creativity. So it really gets you into some very interesting ideas that you might enjoy. So I've got in front of me my own sketchbook. I carry a sketchbook with me everywhere I go, and I think it's a good idea for students to be in that habit as well. Anytime I have occasion to sit and wait, then I think there's a possibility that I'll be able to sit and sketch. And if there are people around me, then people become an easy focus. And it's important to be looking at whatever it is you're drawing. So I have to be careful because I don't want to make people uncomfortable that I'm staring at them. So I try to glance and just make a glance and a few little marks on the page. And that helps a lot. I've been fortunate to have jobs where where watching someone was a part of the job. I'm a security attendant at a museum, so I often am watching people as they go through tours. And so I can do quick sketches, and they're very gestural. They're linear and gestural. They're done very quickly, and they're not meant to be perfect representations. And so I don't feel like I'm doing anything that interferes with the person's personal identity or security in doing that, because they usually don't turn out very recognizable. Maybe someone who knew that person very well might recognize a gesture that they hold or a posture. Okay, here's another one. I also use my sketchbooks for taking notes, but here's another gestural drawing that I think turned out kind of nicely. And these are just such good practice to keep you in shape. And now this is after having had many semesters of life drawing classes, but it doesn't hurt to start at any level that you're at, wherever you are as you start to draw. Beginning to do gesture drawing can only help. It can only help as you go along. So my own sketchbook, I usually take one like this. This is a brand new one. And I'll take it and do something to the front that personalizes it. And so on this one, you can see I've covered the drawing that was on there, that's on every cover, with my own little bit of trivia. And I do keep a collection of trivia. I glue an envelope in the back so that I have a place to store little bits of stuff that I want to use for design work. And it looks like a trash heap to a lot of people, but to me, there's quite a treasure in there. And so this one, I've used little scraps of fabric and a little strip of tear strip off of some packaging. I love packaging, by the way. And this is the back of a box of pencils or something that had a plastic cover, and I just ripped it off, and it had this wonderful rough edge on there. And I like rough edges. I like the things that are incidental. I like things that happen rather spontaneously, like a frog in your throat. So anyway, that's the kind of thing you can do. And many of my sketchbooks you see have that kind of design on them that came just from collecting little incidental pieces of paper that came across my path. Now this is one that the paper was under my easel as I was painting, and so it got lots of paint marks on it. And then I added a few other little marks and tore a strip off and moved it to another position. So we're talking design there. And design is an important part of art practice and drawing, so we'll be talking about that as well. So there's just so many wonderful and fun things you can do if you carry a sketchbook and you use it for sort of a multi-purpose tool. On the first page of every sketchbook, I personalize it with my name and contact information. I would want someone to find this and contact me if I lost it and try to return it to me. And then I'll include, these are a couple little pieces of paper I had scribbled on, and just tore them off, glued them on, and used them to help create a design. So you can do little bits of things like that, and you might like something prettier. I kind of like unusual, but you might like something prettier on yours, but you can certainly do that, and I always try to include the date. So I keep notes in here, things I hear on the news that make me think something, designs that I can make from little bits of stuff I've collected. I love blue tape, by the way. So those are the kinds of things I'd like to see you as an art student, as a drawing student, and a design student begin to do. Begin to keep a sketchbook and begin to draw in it, attempt to draw in it. And really, it's more than an attempt. You know, what is a drawing? Okay, let's go over to the easel. And by the way, that's my motto for you. I'd like for you to try your hand at art. This is a hand I drew one of the last classes we had in face-to-face classes. The students were challenged to draw their own hands. And a hand's a hard thing to draw. And so if you want a challenge and you want to develop your skill, that's a good thing. You've always got it with you, so you can pose your hand in a number of different positions and try to draw it. And that's really a good way to work. So that's my motto. Try your hand at art and see what you can do. Anymore, we do so much virtually. We do so much with virtual media that we lose hand skills. We're sort of in danger of losing hand skills. And I really like to encourage people to continue doing that, especially young people, because they need to develop those skills. We never know when we're going to need them. And it's better to have more skills than fewer. So I really encourage people to try. And then all us older folks, it really helps us keep our dexterity, our mental acuity. So here's the thing. Now let's think about what drawing is. You probably hadn't thought much about it, but you've been drawing, most likely, since you were a little child. You may have stopped somewhere along the way, probably did, because often children make marks on things that they're not supposed to, and sometimes get in trouble for that, and then that sort of puts a damper on their continued interest in drawing. So, but most children love to have a crayon in their hands. Most children love to draw. So I want you to think about what drawing is. Drawing is mark making. It's taking a tool of some kind that is capable of producing a mark. Sometimes it's a pointed tool, sometimes not. And then having a receptive surface. So if you're at the beach, you're sitting in the sand, you can take your finger and you can make a mark in the sand. You can draw. Well, you're drawing, and that's a drawing you've created on the sand, whatever it is. Now, our drawings can become writing, printing and writing, and that's a wonderful. On a piece of paper, whatever that mark is, you've created a drawing. So I've got a drawing here, and the receptive surface is important. This surface over here is one that I could not make a mark on with this piece of this drawing instrument. This is a piece of hold on, I have to look. Oh, Conti. I couldn't think of it. Conti crayon. And it's kind of like a hard pastel. It's sort of like the colored pencils, the lead and a colored pencil, sort of like that. So anyway, it probably has some clay and other things in there. And so that makes a mark on a surface that can receive that mark. And the surface So we have to be sure we have both a tool that marks and a surface that receives a mark. So think about dividing a page. When we are creating a drawing, the first thing we have to consider is space. So I'm going to write the word space here. And space has to do with the area in which the art is being created. If you're making a sculpture, the space is three-dimensional. And so you would have a different approach to that than you do with a two-dimensional flat surface. And of course, we know that in truth, if we looked at this through a microscope, this would not be two-dimensional, it would be three-dimensional, because everything in the world is molecular and atomic and maybe below that I don't even know about. But when we are drawing, for our purposes, we have a two-dimensional space, and we confine our drawing to that space. So maybe you want to set up a format like this on a larger page just to have a space defined. And then you want to make a mark that divides that space into two parts. Now, it's really very common to divide it in a way that's almost half and half. You know, that's not an unusual way to define space. So either vertically or horizontally, our tendency is to want to divide a space equally in half. And we tend to kind of like that symmetry. But that's also a little boring because that's what most people do. So what I like to do in the space that I'm working is try to come up with something different. And you saw my division of space there. So what if I do something like this? Now that's more interesting than that. At least to me it is. You might find a way, and it's a great challenge for you to try to make a symmetric, I need to write that word for you, symmetric. I always ask myself if it has two M's, and I'm not sure at this moment, but a symmetric where both sides are equal, and I don't think this one's exactly equal, so let's put another line there. So the two parts are pretty much the same. That's symmetric. It's almost like a mirror image. This is not symmetric, but this is symmetric. Well, no, this is symmetric without the marking tool in my hand. And then this is not symmetric, and this is not symmetric. Okay, this is symmetric. Okay, so that's the idea. If you want to make it like this, then it's asymmetric. So those are three terms that it will be good for you to know as you work. So why don't you take this as your activity for the lesson today. Take a blank page in your sketchbook or a blank piece of paper, whatever you've got. Use your paper bag if you need to. Tear it open and lay it flat and your lump of charcoal. And set yourself up several formats in which to work. And maybe you want your format to be horizontal instead of vertical, or portrait instead of landscape. Either way, it's fine. Do a variety. Because the more options you give yourself, the more creative you become. You can become very creative and then narrow down to what's best. And then just try several different ways of dividing that format and figure out what works, what you really enjoy, what you find interesting. How can you divide that format so that it's extremely interesting? Okay, just a line though, not a shape. A shape is when you enclose an area. So here's a line, and here's a shape. So this is a line, and this is a shape. That will be your assignment now. So fill a page with as many different ideas, fill several pages with as many different ideas as you can. And the next lesson we'll get into will be developing light and dark areas and creating shapes. We'll learn the basic elements. There are 6 elements of art, and we'll talk about those, and they all relate to the drawing task. So thanks for being here for the lesson, and I hope you'll be back for the next one.